Let's take a look at the Candela Obscura Quickstart Guide, the new Critical Role game. They're streaming the games now. This is a dice pool game, a lot of new different mechanics. Let's see what it's all about. You can get these rules right now. I'll put a link in the description below for where you can grab yourself a copy of them. The lead game designer is Spenser Starke and Rowan Hall. Spencer's done a video. I'll put a link to that video as well on how to play the game, a quick one. And then we have Christopher Gray, Tracey Harrison, and Teliesin Jaffe as additional game designers. Getting started in Candela Obscura. So Candela Obscura is a horror tabletop role-playing game about occult investigators who hunt down dangerous supernatural forces. It's also the name of a paranormal secret society charged with protecting the sprawling turn-of-the-century city of New Fair. Rules of the world. Candela Obscura takes place in a world that resembles your own. The average citizen neither knows about nor would believe in magic or its effects. And there's a barrier against this magic known as the flare. Mechanics. Preparation. It's played in a series of assignments given out by the Circle's Lightkeeper, character played by the GM, so like a GMPC. Red flag there a little bit. 9 6-sided dice. 3 of these are of separate and distinct color. They're called gilded dice. The rest are standard dice. Your group will need a circle sheet and field guides, and you can get those also. Here's the field guides, what they look like. Here is a character sheet. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail. Here is the circle sheet. You also need a GM to run the session. Dice mechanics. Candela Obscura is using the Illuminated World's D6 dice pool system. That's where you roll a number of dice, and in this system you're going to roll a maximum of 6, and you look for what's the highest result on the dice, and that'll determine the degree of success or failure that you have, with 1 through 3 being a failure, 4 through 5 being a mixed success, and a 6 being a full success. If you roll multiple 6s, you can get a critical success. So what's the odds of that look like? I kind of put together some odds here for us. Here's Candela Obscura, Illuminated World's odds. So you can roll if you even have 0 dice. And what you do for that is you roll 2 dice and you take the lower of the 2. So high chance of failure there, small chance of a full success. 1 die, 50% failure, 17 full success. Then it goes on up for 2, 3, 4, 5, and the maximum of 6 dice. By the time you hit 5 or 6, your chance of failure is very low, and you're getting like a 20% chance of a critical success. So where's the sweet spot as a player? Well, let's see, 2 dice is a 1 in 4 chance of failure. 3 is less than a 1 in 6 chance of failure. So probably getting up to 3 is a good sweet spot to hit. So that is the dice mechanics. Now you have what are called actions. And these represent your character's proficiency at a given maneuver under pressure. That looks like on the character sheet, this. So you have different areas for actions: nerve, cunning, and intuition. And this pre-generated character would have 1 move action. So anytime they tried to do something that's running or dodging or navigating, they'd roll 1 die. And we'll get to ways they can increase that in a second. If they have, again, no points in action, they can still try it, but they take the lower of 2 dice. All right, then next we go to drives. So this is a way you can add dice when you're trying to do an action. They are a resource you may expend, and you replenish them during a session. You spend 1 drive point to add an additional die. You may spend as many drive points per roll as you have available. The dice pool can never have more than 6 dice, like we discussed earlier. So let's look at a pre-generated character's drive. So this pre-generated character, a slink, would be pretty good at moving and striking and controlling, and have 3 drive to spend it. So they could do a move action and get it up to rolling 4d6, and that'd give them only a 6% chance of failure, 40, 50, over 50% chance of a full or critical success for that. All drives have a max. Another player can assist you by spending 1 of their own drive points for another die, and you can assist from multiple players. I believe the die pool would still be limited to 6, so they would not be able to go past 6 on your roll. The different categories, like we looked at on the pre-generated character sheet, are nerve and cunning and intuition. The nerve represents moving, striking, and controlling. Cunning represents reading, swaying, and hiding. Intuition, survey, focus, and sense. Okay, then you have what are called gilded actions. And let's look at the character sheet for what a gilded action would look like. So a gilded action, the slink has a gilded hide. They also have 2 action points. So what are those things called? I don't know. Anyway, they have 2 circles filled in, so they get to roll 2 dice on a normal roll. More if they spend drive on it or get help on it. Okay, so Gilded Actions. If it's gilded, you will replace one of the dice with a gilded die, so it should be a different color. And if you choose the result on that die, you recover 1 point of drive associated with the action you rolled. You can choose the die even if it's less. I don't know how it interacts with the 2d6 mechanics, to get a crit. Maybe if it's one of the two, it would work. Open question there on that. I don't know for sure the answer. Okay, then you have a thing called resistances. So let's say you roll, and after you're done rolling, you get a failure and you don't want a failure. You get a mixed success, you don't want a mixed success. You want to try and get something better. You may choose to spend a resistance from the pertaining drive. You only get to re-roll basically your base action dice. No additional dice come from drive or from assistance can be re-rolled. So you re-roll that dice. If it's gilded, you can roll that gilded die. And if it's a value of 0 when you re-roll it, you roll 2, take the lower like normal, and you have to accept the results of the new roll. So let's look at a character sheet, see what kind of resistances we got. So the Slink has got 2 resistances in cunning, 1 resistance in nerve. You can see that they're really focused in on cunning with a lot of drive options available, resistance available, multiple levels of the hide action, etc. Okay, so that was resistance. Now finally, you have what are called abilities. Unlike other like D&D, it's not strength, dex, intelligence, wisdom. Instead, it's like features that a class has. So these are unique moves available to each of the characters, and you will see them in the pre-generated characters in the middle of the character sheet. So there's one that goes with the role, and there's one that goes with the specialty. And when you're picking your pre-gen, you'd pick one of these 2 things. So for example, for the Slink role, they have a ability called Scout. If you have time to observe a location, you can spend 1 intuition to ask a question. 1 intuition to ask a question. What do I notice here that others do not see? I don't know if that means 1 intuition drive, which they don't have any intuition drives. So open question on what that means exactly. And then they could pick one of the 2 specialties. So let's say they pick Street Smarts. You know how to keep an eye on surroundings. Whenever you make a survey roll, you may spend any drive instead of only using intuition. Intuition is spoken of again when you're doing a survey roll. Okay, so you're doing survey, you have no drives, you can add some more from cunning or nerve. There we go, that's your Street Smarts. Leverage. On a successful read roll, you may ask the GM what your target truly wants. On any sway rolls you make using this information, also add your current cunning resistance, which is 2, so that's going to help a lot. So that's some examples of the character abilities. Next, we go to roles and consequences. So a good statement here, action rolls should not be used for every move a character makes. So only when there's actual doubt it'll work and repercussions if it doesn't. So just standard, I search an area, you should find what's there. I search an area while I'm being chased by enemies, then you might have to make a roll. The GM sets the stakes for the roll, so this is what the penalty might be if you have a failure. Low, normal, or high. By default, the stakes will be normal. And the range of outcomes here, so a low stakes roll won't put you into any immediate peril, whereas a high stakes roll will almost always result in taking damage or finding yourself in a very difficult position. You can fight enemies, and the consequences of a failure for fighting enemies, or even a mixed success sometimes, might result in an adversary attacking a character and dealing 1 or more marks to the character. We'll get to marks in just a second. So building a character. There are 5 roles: face, muscle, scholar, slink, and weird. Each of these roles has 2 specialties. So journalist, magician under face, explorer, soldier under muscle, doctor, professor under scholar, criminal, detective under slink, medium, occultist under weird. So after choosing your specialty, you fill in on the pre-generated characters all the bolded circles, then you take one of the 2 abilities from the specialist list. So let's look at the character sheet. Also, you'll give them the names, pronouns, styles, describe their catalyst, why they joined Candela Obscura, and their question, what grand or personal mystery they're hoping to answer through their investigations. So here's the Slink, specialty criminal, and we looked at them a little bit already. Then next we have a scholar, specialty professor. So really good at intuition, a little bit good at cunning, specifically swaying, and they have a good kind of broad mix of drive. Say if they're a professor, they pick Steel Mind once per assignment. When you should take a brain mark, you may instead spend 2 intuition to negate it. So again, they have intuition marks, so I think that's what that means. We'll get to marks over here on the right, and gear and illumination keys here in a second. So you got the face magician, weird occultist, and muscle explorer in the pre-generated characters that come on the Candela Obscura download. So then next, oh, and describing the catalyst and such goes up here on the top. All right. Now, connections, gear, and marks. In the full game, there's a defined method for building relationships between the characters. For the purposes of this game, you can just simply, make up whatever you want to do for connections. Now, you choose your gear from the available list when it's needed. You don't need to pre-select. So, that's not my cup of tea for how to do adventuring, but it makes it so you don't have to have a lot of pre-work done to play the game. So people who enjoy that will be able to dig right into the game. You can pick any 3 pieces of gear during the assignment. Basically, you'll have it on hand when you need it. So let's look at the slink. Bleed detector, hand weapon, bleed contaminant, vial, forged documents, burglary equipment, body armor. And they can soak damage. So there you go. So you take a shot from a gun. It's going to be 1 body damage. You say, oh, I got this bulletproof vest on. You need some forged documents. Here you go. I got the forged documents. So during each assignment, choose up to 3 of these. You can also handwrite in something additional that you might have. Okay, so that was your gear. Now for damage. Damage comes in marks. There's 3 different kinds of damage: body, brain, and bleed. Body is physical, brain is mental, bleed is magical. If you should ever need to take a mark, take damage, and can't because the track is full, erase all the marks on that track, become incapacitated in the scene, and immediately take a scar. Scars represent the permanent changes that affect a character. When you take a scar, you will write down a narrative change based on what happened. You'll also take one of your actions and reduce it by 1 and add it to another. So say our slink here takes some sort of wound, might lose 1 point, or actually takes a scar from damage, maybe loses a point in hide, and maybe they will now put another point into read, because they didn't read that the shot was about to be taken, and they're hyper-focused on watching for an attack coming. So that's an example of how you would deal with having taken 3 marks plus 1 more mark to give you a scar. Okay, there's that. There we go. Circle mechanics. So the characters basically have a party, a circle, and your group will choose a circle name and ability. And after each assignment, the GM will see how the circle advances. So experience is like at the circle level, at the party level. So here is a circle sheet, and there is a track here of basically experience called Illumination. After you finish an assignment, the GM will ask 3 questions, and for every yes, fill in a box or a circle there. Did you contain or destroy a source of bleed? Did you provide comfort or support for those affected? Did you bring something of importance back for Candela Obscura to study? Then you will look at the characters and see if they fulfilled any illumination keys for their character for the session. If none did, you don't add any more circles. If some did, you add 2 more. And if all did, you add 4 more. So what are these illumination keys on the characters? We see them right down here on the character ability area. Illumination key, this is the slink. Do something illegal, make a deal, or stand up to authority. So if they did one of those things, they'd be a yes for that question. Some other examples: the scholar, mentoring an ally, reverence research, or make a plan. The face, perform a trick, spot a ruse, seek out real magic, etc. All right. And there's also milestones you can see in this party sheet, and it's not really defined in this Quickstart guide what those could do. I imagine they'd be like in the assignment. Well, I don't know what they would do necessarily. But anyway, I'm sure it's covered in the full game. Okay, between assignments, you can spend resources to heal all of one player's marks, to refresh, to fill all of one player's drives, to train to gain 1 bonus die that you can use on any roll in the next session. So circles start with an amount in each of these resources equal to the number of the circle members plus 1, and not refreshed until the illumination track is completely filled, so use them wisely. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. Circle abilities. Choose 1 at character creation and 1 each time your circle advances. So every time you get a full advancement, you add another one of these. So let's say you picked stamina training. Your circle has 3 gilded dice at the beginning of every assignment you may add to any roll. Once a die has been rolled, it's expended. So there's an example there. Character advancement. At character advancement, each player can choose 2 different options. Add 1 action point, add 2 drives, take a new ability, gild an additional action. Resources. In each of the following resources, fill in both sections, top and bottom, equal to the number of your circle members plus 1. And they may spend them. They spend up to 2 resources of their choosing. When used, only erase the top ones, and then that resets when they advance. That's the party basically experience track. So this game is really party focused. So you can't necessarily take your character from party to party without kind of mixing stuff up, which I think is not a good thing in the system. But that's what that is. Okay, so scars. So scars, once you've taken enough damage, you can then get scarred. When the PC takes a scar, encourage the player to look deeply at their character and consider the way they might change throughout the campaign. And there's a lot of info here, and I'm sure there's a lot more probably in the main game about what you can do with scars. And here's some samples. See the following chart for examples of scars. Body scar examples: missing arm, limp, cracked vertebrae, tremor, deafness on one ear, burned flesh. Brain scar examples: anxiety around crowds, fear of deep water, consumed by guilt, lowered confidence, hero complex, jumpy at loud sounds. Bleed scars: eyes that don't blink, vampiric teeth, purple blood, elongated fingers, elbows that bend backward, some scary stuff, constantly exhaling smoke. So that's ideas for types of scars you can get. All right, so that is it. That's what you need to know to play a character. Let's dig a little bit into the setting of Candela Obscura. So it's set in the Fairlands. In the northern country of Hale lies the fertile valley known as the Fairlands. And there's a pretty good map here. Here we go. Let's take a peek at this map before we go in more. So this is all the Fairlands. This map, we got a north here. I don't see a scale on the map, so I don't know the extent of it. I think it's pretty cool cartography how it's kind of a top-down or kind of a isometric view, and then it goes to a border that's the horizon. That's pretty cool. And we have all these locations. So you have New Fair, the city. You have Tottergrass, the farmlands. Stentorian River, Westrek. These are like the battlegrounds for the last war. Haven Hills, the Verge, the Vast Chasm. This is where the flood came 2,000 years ago that destroyed Old Haven or Old Fair. Glass Sea, Seasway, the Scarlet Wood, and the Bridleborn Mountains. All right, so with that map in mind, let's look at the settings more. So the last Great War was with a country called Otherwhere, and it was 3 years ago. The language of the Hale citizens found it easier to speak frankly with their language. That's why Otherwhere is used, or New Fair, or Westrek, etc. Just real direct names, but they say you can fill in the names you want instead. City of New Fair is a sprawling and diverse city on the western coast of the continent of Hale. The government and other power systems. So the ascendancy is the official religion of the Fairlands. The primacy is the central government of the Fairlands. The periphery are the police force within the Fairlands, and all of them corrupt to some extent. Old Fair is the mysterious ruins below New Fair. Once a thriving civilization, flooded 2,000 years ago, and a local thinning is torn asunder. It was this cataclysmic event that tore a rift in the sea, known as the Vast Chasm, and from there came the flood. Lighthouses. As Candela Obscura evolved through the ages, they attempted to find and secure the effects of bleed. When the investigators discovered thinnings, they built lighthouses containing magical astrolabs at each site to hold back the deadly forces from beyond this realm. Vast Chasm is the rift in the ocean. Far away is anywhere that's not in New Havens. Otherwhere is the enemy country across the sea. Okay, then we get into the city of New Fair itself. And it's got basically districts defined, but no like detailed city map. You got Briar Green, the most verdant area of the city. The Eaves, the exclusive upscale community. Hollow Harbor, the port of New Fair. Nine Irons, the home base for the periphery, which is the police force. Red Lamp, the arts district within the city and New Fair's hub of legalized sex work. The Steel, the industrial portion of the city. The Shrive Line, the home of the ascendancy within the Fairlands. That is the religious power. The middle class sprawl of New Fair, the Sidle? We'll say Sidle. The Silver Slip, the seat of the primacy, which is the government body. The South Soffit, the lower class district, and the Varnish, the downtown area. Now, the lands around New Fair. We have Seasway, the small coastal village. Tottergrass, the rural land. It's got ascendancy, has strong, decades-long foothold. So here I can see some real, Halloween-esque type things happening. The Verge, over here to the west, the high cliffs. There's a big monolith out there, a famous monolith. The Bridleborn Mountains to the east here, and they are full of bootleggers because the Scarlet Wood that carpets their lower slopes here is an ancient forest that has hallucinogenic sap. And finally, Westrek, the war-torn land, and it's full of landmines. So there's the starting area for a campaign of Candela Obscura. Now, what are the organizations? So Candela Obscura is a secret society of investigators whose primary aim is the survival of mankind against supernatural forces. And before its fall, upon the first signs of civilization's destruction, the fall of Oldfair, the covert alliance of altruistic scholars arrived in Oldfair, and that was like the start of Candela Obscura. For centuries, Candela Obscura was utilizing lighthouses around the world to hold together large rifts in the flare. And these formal lighthouses are modeled after Candela Obscura's central lighthouse, a massive magical vault known as the Pharos. Values, protectors of the people. Atmosphere, libraries full of ancient and esoteric literature. Working by candlelight, formal attire. Strange artifacts in glass cases. Secret entrances, hidden passageways. Their key assets is the fourth Pharos, again that big lighthouse. The Chapter House Archives, which are a collection of books, artifacts, and records. The Lightkeepers, which are veteran members of the Candela Obscura who are retiring or retired from field work. Then we have the Esoteric Order of New Sciences, Eons. Founded by a small faction of scientists and occultists, this insidious cohort believes in the very public incorporation of science with magic. The old societies have failed mankind, and it's time for bold action. And so there's, of course, a rivalry between them and Candela Obscura. Their atmosphere, laboratories with beakers and brass, industrial spaces, upscale businesses, dense files, hastily scrawled notes, dangerous experimentation, electricity, alchemical symbology. Key assets, the Devil's Well, an attempt by Eons to create a vault styled after the fourth Pharos. Galvanica Engineering Works, home to many of their top minds and experimental works. The Adjuvant, an experimental antidote for the bleed. Okay, then this one kind of reminds me of the X-Files and Mulder and those guys. An underfunded, undervalued division of the periphery of the police force, specializing in the discovery, analysis, and suppression of magical phenomenon. They keep knowledge of magical abnormalities from the public, government buildings, sterile offices, redacted files, confidentiality, red tape, uniforms, and manipulated news. Key assets, the Rediker Room. Founded in 1883, this location houses a number of magical phenomenon unknown to the public. The Saith device, used to detect bleed on an object, place, or person. The Gray Slate Sanatorium, where they hide away civilians and agents who were subjected to too much bleed. And they say they're going gray when they do that. All right, so that is the world of Candela Obscura. So now let's look at the first sample adventure that they put out. Dress to Kill. So the premise, at the new Fair World Expedition, a woman models a stunning dress made of a color the world has never seen. During the presentation, she collapses into a pile of glowing bones and viscera. Candela Obscura comes to investigate what happened to her. And they go over a lot of what's really going on. The secret behind the substance in the corporation's mines along Bitter River. They've captured a primordial creature and are harvesting its venom. They also go into some real-world history. The main adversary is the Radiance Corporation. Some real-world history that kind of informed this and gave it some background. Okay, then, so overall, this is an assignment. And then in the assignment, they have scenes. So you have the hook. Each mystery in Candela Obscura begins with the hook, starting section of the adventure where the characters are not yet part of the action. And read this section to the players as the hook for this adventure. So a lot of text here. That's a huge no-no for me when I'm running games, because I don't find players will pay attention anywhere near that much information. I mean, I do have to add to them that this is basically also doing a good job of introducing the world itself to the players. Something to consider might be to give them this ahead of time for them to read, and then just like summarize the main points when you start playing. Okay, then the next scene is the arrival, and in the arrival phase, you will introduce your players to the start of the mystery by allowing them to explore the aftermath of the hook. One piece of critical information, known as the reveal, is the most important clue to convey to the players, no matter what approach they take. So a lot of this is kind of, I don't know how to say it, like a bunch of dressing, a bunch of ideas, a bunch of NPC samples, and you kind of have to do it on the fly. So not really my style of adventure. It's cool, it's different, I like adventures to be like a place, NPCs that have objectives, and things happen regardless of what the players do. And the players got to figure the right way to find out the information they need to find out. This is kind of like, hey, do some stuff and then make sure they find this out. So it's almost like it doesn't matter if they do the right thing or not. You're just there to get them that reveal in the end. So not a big fan, but anyway, that's how this is all set up. So the reveal is here. And they do have little bits here and there, like a good opportunity to raise the stakes by doling out bleed marks or even a brain mark to a player who interacts with the remains. Could run into a OUP agent who arrived on the scene to destroy the evidence, or the corpse infested with bleed could reform into a frightening adversary. So, it's all full of ideas like that. There's like multiple ways you could run it, and that's the arrival. So then they have Exploration 1, Exploration 2. Each one of these has the prime reveal, and the main reveal in 1, there's actually an image for this one further on here. So that's like the main reveal in 1, that they find out the address here of where the dress came from. And again, ideas for what to do, different ways to do it. The inside is permeated with bleed, and there are spatters of the luminous green dye on every wall of the crate. Bleed marks from their virulent pigment. A good bit of insight here. Never force players to roll for something their characters could easily accomplish. Okay, so that was Exploration 1. Exploration 2, they found, they need to go to the Morden Springs. Now that your players are in the second exploration phase, they should know enough about the actual mystery to pursue it directly. Read this section. Here's the main reveal that you need to get out. Underdark transforms people who encounter Undark. Transforms people who encounter it most commonly by making all their bones brittle and breakable, and then reshaping them back into uncanny forms within their flesh. The victims of this contamination are known to behave violently and attack anyone who comes near. So most likely the place to plant your reveal would be in the Radiance Corporation's factory, but there's several other ideas for what you can do. You can use an NPC to give the circle a ward that can protect characters from taking a bleed mark, or provide an item that could aid their investigation. Cecil Wallace is a smooth-talking managing director of the Radiance Corporation that will go head-to-head with a face character. And the stakes in this location should be high, so there's some ideas about stakes. It'd be good if they have like the stuff kind of bulleted in a summary right up top, because if you're running this, there's a lot here, right? A lot of different ideas, and you could have your head buried in the book if you didn't get it all marked up ahead of time. Another idea here, remember that no matter the route, so this is a bad example of basically, hey, I'm going to tell you characters a story, regardless of if whatever you do. Remember, no matter the route your players choose to take, you'll want the stakes to be a one notch higher than the previous exploration phase. So raising the stakes needs to go deeper. And then in Exploration 1, Exploration 2, now Escalation 1. In the first escalation phase, the story should introduce a twist of some kind. Something here isn't what it seems. So the reveal for this one is the Undark mine isn't a traditional mine. Rather, than excavating the mountain for a mineral, the workers are extracting a glowing green liquid that the factory possesses to make dye. You must make sure your players make it to the Undark mine to set up the reveal in Escalation 2. They can meet their capitalist foes in a variety of locations, but it's time to face danger. Escalation 2. In the second phase, the players can use all of their new knowledge and tools to push directly toward the climax. And read this to your players. So again, the read aloud kind of takes agency away from what the players do. You make your way toward the mine shaft, so it's assuming the players are doing something. Reveal, distressed and otherworldly cries echo through the mine. They are unlike any sound previously known to human ears. How can you do that? Describing the way in which bleed has corrupted this place, make it visceral, strange, and gruesome. They could run into more suited figures with firearms. The Undark miners who have disintegrated beyond recognition and now lay melted into the walls could attack them. Cave wraiths could attack them, etc. So just a bunch of ideas for Escalation 2. Now you come to the climax of the adventure. In the climax phase, the drama of the story should reach a crescendo. There's a reveal. Within the mines, Eons has imprisoned the Undark beast, but there appears to be a way to release it. If they look closely at the equipment used to extract the poisonous fluid, they will recognize the symbol for Eons. It's up to you to decide what this monster looks like. So that, the monster is not described in the adventure. I just wish the adventure would put some more concrete stuff in, and then maybe give some ideas for other ways, as maybe a bulleted list. That'd be a good way to do it. A nice key point here, as the GM, you are not your party's enemy. You're not hoping for their failure. You should be actually rooting for their success. And then they wrap up the climax either by releasing the monster or destroying the monster or some other way. you come to the epilogue. The purpose of the epilogue is to wrap up any loose ends, but also to set you up for success in future sessions of Candela Obscura. And you have some epilogue questions to ask. Then you'd go again to the circle guide and ask the questions here. So this is like 3 good questions to look at when you're reading the adventure before you even start reading the adventure. Where could they find a source of the bleed? How could they contain it? How could they destroy it? Did they provide comfort or support for those affected by it? And did they bring something of importance back for Candela Obscura to study? So 3 things to know, and maybe probably mark in the adventure before you go into it. And that is it. So here's the field guide. It talks about drives, nerve, cunning, and intuition, how you can add 1 to a roll. It talks about your actions and how you roll a number of dice equal to the action's rating. Okay, so this is called a rating. And it talks about gilded actions. That's the way to earn back drive points. Resistances to re-roll the dice. And then other notes. So that's it. That wraps up my review of the Quick Start Guide for Candela Obscura. Thank you so much for watching.